Hey, this is Maarten from JetBrains. In this screencast, we're diving into the shared resources feature of TeamCity. But before we do so, let's discuss what it can be used for. We can easily set up a pool of build agents for our TeamCity server. Using multiple build agents, we can run builds and build configurations in parallel. For example, different branches of the same project can be built at the same time, each one on a separate build agent. Now, what would happen if those build agents are sharing a specific resource? For example, a load test agent of which we have only one on a remote machine somewhere. Can we constrain the amount of builds that run simultaneously? Or perhaps point each build agent to a different installation of the shared resource? Well, using the Shared Resources plugin, we can do this. Let's go! In every project, we can specify one or more shared resources that can be used to decide the number of builds that can run simultaneously for that project. Let's specify a resource we want to be able to lock. We can do this in the project home and then go to the Shared Resources tab. We will have to give the shared resource a name, which we can then use in our builds later on. The resource type can be infinite, which does not limit the number of concurrently taken read locks at all, but it still provides a different value to each concurrent build. It can also be a quota or a resource with custom values. Let's go with a quota resource. The value of this quota will represent the maximum number of concurrent builds we will be able to run. Let's be very restrictive this time and set the quota to 1. We're not there yet. The build configuration will have to be linked to this shared resource. Under our build configuration, under the build features, we can add a shared resources build feature, which requires a read or write lock on the shared resource we've just created. Let's add a read lock. Once added, the build configuration will only be run on one build agent at a time. Let's queue a couple of builds. We will see that these builds will never run simultaneously, even though there is an idle build agent. This is because only one read lock to the shared resource can be requested at a time. Shared resources can be used on projects and on project groups. If you want to share a resource between all projects in a project group, it can be added under the project group instead of just under the project. Do note that if we want to make use of this shared resource in our build configuration, we will have to add the shared resources build feature to it. Now let's go back to the example of having a load test agent on a machine somewhere. Our build configuration makes use of this load test agent, but there are only 2 load test agents available. Wouldn't it be nice if we could limit the number of concurrent builds based on the number of load test agents available? And wouldn't it be even nicer if we could get the URL to those load test agents in our build configuration? Well, we can achieve this by specifying a custom resource value for every lock acquired. Let's add a shared resource, and this time we will create one with custom values. We can provide the server names for our load test agents, each on a separate line. In this case, there will only be 2 of them, so only 2 builds requiring this resource will be able to run simultaneously. If we add a shared resource build feature, we can specify how we want to acquire a lock on this shared resource. We can lock on any value that's not locked, we can lock on all values or on a specific value. Since in our example, we need a specific load test machine name, but it doesn't really matter which build gets assigned which resource, we can simply lock on any value. In our build steps, we can now make use of this shared resource and run our load tests on the correct machine. Let's add a build step making use of the shared resource value. For sake of this simple example, I'll add a command line runner. We can echo some outputs to the build log and make use of our shared resource. TeamCity will even give us auto-completion on it. Now let's run our builds and see what the output is. If we track the build log for one of these builds, we can see that the build gets assigned a value from the shared resource. Thank you for watching and see you next time.